My name's Lisa Savaglio. I'm the Vice Chair of the NOVA region for the Virginia Association of Democratic Chairs. And I have the honor of introducing our moderator this evening, who is Michael Pope. He is currently a reporter for Virginia Public Radio. He's reported for NPR, the New York Daily News, and the Alexandria Gazette Packet. He's also the author of 4 books and the co-host of the Transition Virginia podcast. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's great to be here, and let's jump right into it. I'm going to introduce the candidates, and then we're going to get to opening statements. And so just, I guess, a little bit about the format here, because we're limited to 1 hour. We're going to limit the answers to all of the answers to everything you'll hear tonight to 1 minute. And you might even hear the mic get cut off if the candidates talk too long, but I know the candidates won't do that, right? So I'm going to introduce the candidates, and then we're going to get right into opening statements. So we're going to start with Hala Ayala, Sam Rasool, Andrea McClellan, Sean Perryman, Mark Levine, and Xavier Warren. And that is the order that you will see these candidates on the ballot in June. And so now we're going to start with opening statements. Delegate Ayala, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Delegate Ayala, and I am happy to be with all of you tonight. For those who aren't familiar, I represent Virginia's 51st District in the House of Delegates here in Prince William County, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm a lifelong Virginia resident and dedicated my life to public service. But for a long time, I didn't feel like politicians looked like me or had the lived experience like mine. And like so many Virginians, I wasn't politically engaged until 2008, when then Barack Obama came to Prince William and just spoke to me. And he said, if something, well, not me directly, but just to the crowd, and I was part of that. He said, if something needs fixing, lace up your shoes and do some organizing, and that's what I did. He said, if you're disappointed by your elected officials, grab a clipboard and get some signatures and run for office yourself. And so that's what I did. And in the House, I've been a bridge builder and a team player and know how to get things done. I am Chief Deputy Whip and have ushered some of the most transformative pieces of legislation in our Democratic majority, and we've made the Commonwealth move forward and made so much progress and history. With that, 71% of my legislation is effective. It has passed this year, making me the most effective candidate running, and in 4 historic years.
And our next candidate is Sam Rasool. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having us this evening. It is a pleasure. Look at this virtual stage. We have the most diverse field of candidates ever to run. I'm happy to be able to run with this wonderful crew. In my 8th year in the General Assembly, it's been an honor. As a child of immigrants growing up in a working class family, we said we were going to bring a values-based campaign based upon our 3 family values: always tell the truth, always be kind, never give up. And that truth, love, and grit is how we structured our campaign, by elevating a people's platform with lots of great policy you can find on our website, by really connecting with our neighbors and giving them the help that they need, and by setting our track to visit every city and county in person in a safe way so we can elevate the voices of so many Virginians, their stories and struggles. And for us, wanting to do that while being the first candidate ever elected statewide, 100% funded by individuals only. We were fortunate enough to gather lots of great support along the way. I can't wait to share some thoughts with you this evening. Thank you.
Andrea McClellan.
Thanks. I'm zooming in tonight from Norfolk, Virginia, where I represent 125,000 Virginians in my role on the Norfolk City Council. And I'm running for Lieutenant Governor to continue the work that I've been doing at the local and the regional level to expand more access to equitable opportunity for all Virginians and to break down the barriers for those who've been struggling to get ahead. I know what that's like. I was raised by a single mom who juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet for my brother and me. I worked my way through the University of Virginia with 4 years of work study jobs and Pell Grants, and then I ran 2 small businesses of my own. And when my husband and I moved back to the Hampton Roads region, I decided to get involved and use my business background to raise awareness and funds for good causes and good candidates. And then in 2016, I ran myself. And I'm looking forward to serving as your next Lieutenant Governor to create more equitable access to opportunity. And thanks so much for having me here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to lots of good questions. Thanks.
Sean Perryman.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks to the organizers for putting this together. My name is Sean Perryman, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. My story is an unusual one. I was first in my family to go to college, go to Vanderbilt Law School, and then I was asked to represent Donald Trump in the middle of my practice. I quit my job over it and ended up working for Congressman Elijah Cummings, where I joined as part of the team that investigated the Trump administration. That was really the wake-up call for me, that there were a lot of people in this country who believed in that ideology. So I got more involved in my local community, joining the Fairfax Democratic Committee as part of their leadership team, and then also becoming the youngest president in the 102-year history of the Fairfax County NAACP, where I grew it to be the largest chapter in the Commonwealth, taking on issues like education, equity, criminal justice reform, police reform. And it was this pandemic, along with the murder of George Floyd, and the many things that we've seen over the last year that led me to run for statewide office. Would love to tell you how, as an advocate, I plan to use the role, but thank you for having me.
Mark Levine.
So I am Delegate Mark Levine in my 6th year representing Alexandria, Arlington, and Fairfax. I'm running to be Virginia's first full-time Lieutenant Governor to spend all year round, not just 2 months out of the year, but the other 10 months, not at another job, but serving you, traveling around to every one of Virginia's 133 localities, not as a campaign ploy, but to get the best ideas from you all across the Commonwealth and bring them back to Richmond in both legislative and executive roles. I bring the passion of an outsider. I was 25 years an activist on issues like marriage equality and domestic violence, but the experience of an insider, not just working in Congress for Congressman Barney Frank, but 6 years in the House of Delegates. I serve as chair of 2 very important subcommittees, Public Safety, Constitutional Amendments Subcommittee. I've introduced and passed into law dozens of bills. I've served as a Chief Deputy Whip. I was caucus goalie. Ask any of my colleagues. I tend to be the one that folks come to with questions. I want to bring that experience to serve you as Lieutenant Governor.
And our final opening statement is going to come from Xavier Warren.
I'm Xavier Warren, and I want your vote to be the next Lieutenant Governor. And as a fellow Democratic committee member, we can really bring change to Virginia. As you know, Virginia, we are in a COVID crisis, a racial crisis, climate crisis, and economic crisis that has seen hundreds of Virginia small businesses close, thousands of us to lose our jobs, our schools and also students suffering a digital divide, 50% of our rural hospitals on the brink of closing, our municipalities' budgets are upside down, and many of us facing eviction. I am someone who actually have the experience to take on these challenges that, while great, are not insurmountable. As a small business owner of a very successful federal funding agency, I have helped secure millions of dollars to be able to support schools, hospitals, and cities and counties to be able to help folks in need. That's the experience that I learned from coming from Danville, Pennsylvania County to Hampton University, Hampton Roads, to being an Arlington businessman that I want to bring to make sure everyone have a seat at the table to make Virginia the leader in economic justice, racial justice, and environmental justice as well. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to get into our first question. So the candidates know the order that we're going to work with here. We're going to keep that same order, but go one down. So the first question is going to go to Rasul, and the last question is going to go to Ayala. So let's sort of keep that order, but go one down the list each time. So the first question is this. Now that Republicans have had their convention, they've already selected their candidate before the Democrats, and that is former Delegate Winsome Sears. What makes you the best contrast for voters when they're in the polls, when they're voting? How will you offer the best contrast for Democrats going up against Winsome Sears? So the first person to answer that question is Delegate Sam Rasul. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. What I've learned in my past 8 years is that really voting is an emotional decision, not really a logical one. People are looking for voices that are going to genuinely represent them. And oftentimes people are watching the back and forth that happens on TV and the newspapers between the parties. And for me, it is important for us to be able to be responsive to their needs. And so to pit one of us, against the other candidate oftentimes leaves the real voices of Virginians out in the cold. So when I'm here in my district, when I'm traveling across Virginia, the question rarely ever comes up, why are you going to be better than the Republican? The question is, how are you going to uplift us, our families, and our communities? And I think that the path to victory in November for the Democratic ticket is ensure that we stay laser focused on the needs of Virginians and ensure that we uplift policies, because to me, the policies that we represent collectively that you'll hear tonight is a vision for Virginia that all of us can feel very proud of.
Andrea McClellan.
Well, Winsome Sears held only one office, and she was elected in Norfolk, Virginia. I am the only candidate on the screen here who comes from the Hampton Roads area, which is the second largest voting block in Virginia. And quite honestly, I think it's very important that we have some geographic diversity on our statewide ticket. In addition to ensuring that we maintain the lieutenant governor's seat in the Democratic category, we also need to maintain our majority in the House of Delegates. And 3 of the most competitive House of Delegate seats are in Virginia Beach, where I grew up. So having that understanding of Hampton Roads is really critical. Additionally, I bring 30 years of experience in the business sector, the nonprofit arena, the local public sector, the environment and broadband. I have the executive leadership experience that is important as a lieutenant governor and somebody who might have to move into the role of governor. So the local government experience as well makes me a standout candidate. And if I am your nominee, I can say assuredly I will win in November.
Sean Perryman.
You have to look at Winsome Sears in the context of the full Republican ticket and what they're saying. Winsome is saying that she is going to bring over Black voters to the party, which many people laugh at and scoff at. But she has won a majority minority district before. So we laugh at our own peril. I think we need someone like myself who has a background in the Black community, NAACP, who has the endorsements of faith community and Black officials both in Hampton Roads and all throughout the Commonwealth. And I think also, just as Democrats, and this goes for any of us, we have to be really strong on the contrast between us and the Republican Party. Do we stand for repealing right to work? Do we believe that the minimum wage is high enough at the right times? Where do we stand on getting broadband access to everyone? So I think we have to be very clear and focused in what our message is. We can't be wishy-washy. And we need to have new faces on the ticket that people can get excited about, because the only way we lose is if we don't turn out people's votes in November.
Mark Levine.
The former Delegate Sears is an extreme right-wing ideologue. I'm used to dealing with extreme right-wing ideologues. Folks know that I've been on Fox News hundreds of times dealing with people like Bill O'Reilly and Laura Ingraham. I'm not afraid of them. I know how to combat them. I know how to talk and their talking points. She carries around an assault weapon. I'm the guy that led the fight against assault weapons to try to take them away from dangerous people. I know my stuff. I'm ready to combat her. I've already looked at her speeches. She said that, and this is really offensive, y'all, but this is what she said. She said that abortion was more dangerous to Black people than the Klan. That's some rough stuff, but we have to call her out. We can't have Democrats go along to get along. We have to call her out on her extreme rhetoric. She's a big Trump supporter. Does she, for example, believe that Trump won the election? We need to ask her these questions. We need a tough opponent. I'm ready to take on former Delegate Sears.
Xavier Warren.
I'm currently and have been on my Virginia Promise tour, fresh start statewide tour from Lynchburg, Richmond, and Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia. And what I'm hearing from voters, especially working class folks, is that they've been left behind and that they're actually tired of politicians and the political divide. It's time to bring in new leadership and new ideas. And that's what I bring as well. I'm someone who, beyond just having endorsements from people in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads and South Side, I could be able to bring in small business owners. I could be able to bring in people from the faith community. And instead of just talking about what we wish could do, I actually have the experience in securing millions of dollars for our hospitals, schools, and local governments to bring equity and inclusion to Virginia, to make us the national leader and focus on economic empowerment and win back and make sure we secure the state capital for the next 4 years and into the future.
Hala Ayala.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. I would say this, experience does matter. And I have all the experience, lived and professional experience, to come in here full steam ahead and hit the ground running day one. When we win in June, on June 8th, I'm in leadership, and we have transformed this Commonwealth, as I mentioned, and we'll take that to, to the November general election. We'll take our priorities, our progresses, and all the differences and changes we've made. These have been the floor, not the ceiling. What makes me the best suited candidate or the best candidate for this is, one, my lived experience. I'm a person who brings a plethora of lived experience, my career in cybersecurity for 22 years. And we've seen just recently how much this is needed, plus the relationships that I've built throughout both chambers. As Chief Deputy Whip, if you're going to usher and transform the Commonwealth, you have to get it across the finish line, and it takes a village, and you have to get along with that village. So what I've done in the House to transform with Medicaid expansion and just so many transformative bills, we have been very excited. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the general.
All right, our next question is about priorities. What do you think is the highest priority for Virginians, and what's your plan to address it? We're going to start with Andrea McClellan.
The theme of my campaign is creating more equitable access to opportunity for all Virginians. And I have a lot of priorities, but if I had the opportunity to write my job description, the area that I'd like to focus in on would be the chief broadband strategist, because I think the digital divide has been with us for many years, but the divide is now a chasm through this pandemic. And it's an issue that we need to address to make sure that everybody has that everybody is connected throughout the Commonwealth, that they have access to high-speed, affordable internet. It affects our kids' education, it affects healthcare, it affects workforce development, agricultural, and so much more. And the work that I've done locally and standing up our regional broadband ring as vice chair of our Southside Network Authority has informed me about the issues here in Hampton Roads, creating access to more high-speed, affordable internet. But it differs whether it's in Wise County, it's in Richmond or Norfolk. We need everybody to have access to high-speed, affordable internet.
Sean Perryman.
Yeah, I work in tech policy. I would have to agree with Andrea. Broadband is a huge issue across the Commonwealth. I've also been appointed by FCC Chairman Pai to an advisory committee dealing with this issue. I think we need to treat it like a public investment. But I won't steal her answer. I'll say that what we need to do is the evergreen issue. We're ranked one of the last states in the whole country for workers, one of the top for businesses. We need to change that. And that starts with things like paid sick leave, but it also includes raising the minimum wage sooner. It won't be $15 till 2026, and then repealing right to work. This is something that is crushing our unions and crushing the working class, and I believe making us have that ranking as one of the worst states for workers. So this is something that, as Lieutenant Governor, I would love to address, and I believe that we have to address as a Democratic Party if we want to talk about being the party for the working class.
Mark Levine.
Hard to narrow me down to one issue. I have passed dozens of bills on a wide variety of topics. I want to be the chief problem solver. I think that's actually a great role for the Lieutenant Governor, to go around, as I said, throughout the Commonwealth full time and take the best ideas. So that means, yes, a legislative agenda. That means, yes, an executive agenda. We have so many problems, from inequality to gun issues to healthcare to climate change. And what I want to do is take the best ideas and go with them and help people get individual needs that they have met, whether it's broadband internet, whether it's making sure that our systems work. Sometimes our systems just don't work. The Virginia Employment Commission is one of them. And I think because Lieutenant Governor is mostly out there spreading the word, that's a great thing for the Lieutenant Governor to do. Take the best ideas, take them to the governor, work with the governor, and make sure that we have a legislative agenda that solves problems for everyone. So yes, it's all these things. It's labor unions, but at the end of the day, that's what the Lieutenant Governor can do best.
Xavier Warren.
My highest priority is making sure every Virginian have a job with a livable wage. And how we're going to do that, we need to support our small businesses right now. So not only do they survive COVID, but also thrive. We also need to attract new development domestically and foreign companies to build good union jobs here in Virginia. We need to make investments in education, early childhood education, after school programs. We also need to fully fund our HBCUs and provide free certificates to our 23 community colleges for Pell eligible students. I also want to make Virginia the national leader in clean energy jobs. Currently, right now, we are lagging behind New York and New Jersey, but this will help cut down greenhouse gases, bring billions of dollars to our state budget, and also produce high wage union paying jobs. Those are my top priorities.
Hala Ayala.
Thank you for that question, Michael. Well, we need a healthcare system that is inclusive and and an inclusive economy that works for all, or for every family, especially now as Virginians deal with COVID. As we will come out of this stronger and better prepared for the next crisis if we have the courage to make the right decisions. So for instance, I know what it's like not to have healthcare. You know, when I had my son, I was working at a gas station, had no safety net. Look, we need to invest in our communities, making sure they have affordable, accessible healthcare. And this is the wonderful things that we've done, not only by the expansion of healthcare in the General Assembly to over 500,000 Virginians, but we're continually investing and doing our homework to make sure we can continue to expand access. Also, we need to invest in our communities of infrastructure, high-paying jobs, and make sure equity is in all level of our systems. This is, again, you've seen some of our work in the General Assembly. These are the floor, not the ceiling. And all of these policies and our priorities that we speak about tonight, let's make sure equity, justice, and opportunity, regardless of sex, race, gender, or orientation, is a part of that conversation. We can't cherry pick our policies. We have to make sure this is inclusive to all Virginians.
And Sam Rasool.
Yeah, I think it is important to have a gender equitable recovery as we think through this. We launched a Marshall Plan for Moms to say that women have been disproportionately impacted during this COVID pandemic economically in so many ways. We launched this, then we ended up having a town hall virtually with about 40 moms coming together. And I thought we would hear a lot about, well, I lost my job and here's a few struggles. It's much deeper than that. It is careers thrown off track, mental health spiraling out of control. It are whole families that have been sidetracked in so many different ways. With our Marshall Plan, we talk about newborn to 5, universal child care, paid sick leave, paid family leave, universal caregiver tax credit, so we can actually value some of the caregiving that we give to some of our older Virginians, fair scheduling. There are many priorities, but what we do know is that economically uplifting the woman in a family is the best way, according to the Center for American Progress, to uplift working families all across Virginia.
Okay, so time flies when you're having fun. Looking at the clock, I see we're already reaching the halfway point. So keep that in mind as you answer the questions. You don't have to take the full minute if you don't need to, but we are going to move on to the next question, which is about the right to work. Virginia is a right to work state. We've already heard some of the candidates talk about this. Are you in favor of repealing the right to work and making Virginia no longer a right to work state? And why do you think the Democrats haven't been able to accomplish this yet so far? We're going to start with Sean Perryman.
The short answer is yes, I'm in favor of repealing right to work for the reasons I stated. I also wrote an editorial in the Washington Post about just this issue. It's a law based with racist origins. And I believe that we haven't been successful in doing it because it's a misnomer, right to work. It's something we have to educate the public on. We have to get the votes in the Senate on. And I believe this is where the role of lieutenant governor comes in. You are not a very powerful person. You are influential and you can make this a voting issue. 2023 is when we will see the Senate change dramatically, and the lieutenant governor needs to make right to work and repealing right to work a voting issue for every state senator, even for people in our own party.
Mark Levine.
Yes, I support repeal. I do not like the term. I don't think it's an accurate term. I think the correct term is anti-union laws. I oppose anti-union laws because I'm pro-union, because I believe in working people, because I believe we need rights for workers. And part of that rights for workers is joining a union, is collective bargaining. It's making sure that people can advocate for their best interests, whether it's wages or healthcare or benefits, or making sure they get due process if they're fired. These basic rights, unions have brought people to the middle class for a century now. And the idea that Virginia is going to do its best to repress unions is exactly the wrong thing. We can help businesses and we can help workers. And we can do that by making sure that we have prevailing wages. And in fact, when you have workforce agreements, project labor agreements, what that does is it doesn't just ensure benefits for workers, it also makes sure that we have employers getting really good workers. Unions also bring us apprenticeships. There's so many good things about unions. We have to get rid of the anti-union strategy.
Xavier Warren.
Yes, I support. We have to ask our delegates for an excuse as why it hasn't been done. I'm in this race because I'm a concerned Virginian. I'm actually a union member, have been a proud dues paying member for over a decade now of the NFLPA. So what that means, I actually have experienced collective bargaining, lockouts, being in the room doing arbitration, fought and advocated for injury and also protection pay as well. I know what that's like. And as your lieutenant governor, I will make sure that we protect our brothers and sisters of their right to collective bargain and also to get good working conditions, livable wages, and also solid benefits. If you are a union member, I am your candidate.
How about Ayala?
Thank you for that question. Look, fundamentally, I believe that every Virginian deserves an opportunity to be successful because I've been someone who has struggled. So I stand with our workers and small business owners who are working hard, not only to recover, but recover in the wake of COVID-19. I would never support policies at the expense of workers, the workers of Virginia and their families. So this is about priorities. We've raised the minimum wage. We've put it through collective bargaining. We've addressed workers' rights. Again, these are the floor, not the ceiling, and will continue to do so. This past session and the session before, I carried hazard pay. So I am very focused right now on solutions and including strengthening all of these laws that we passed. So if it comes to the floor and I am your lieutenant governor, which I hope to be, I will be supporting it.
Sam Rasool.
Yes, I'm for repealing right to work. I've been a co-patron and will continue, but it really is in my roots. For me, growing up in a working class family, we grew up in a corner store. I remember my parents had a little milk crate that I would stand on and ring up the register, and we would stay in that store 365 days a year. And it was just that work ethic. And I think that being behind working families in Virginia, this is the least that we can do. That's why I'm proud to have the first campaign for lieutenant governor in Virginia history to unionize. We believe that we should put our values to work for sure. It was labor that brought me into politics. My local president of our CWA down here years ago recruited me to be in. So we've walked many picket lines, including just a couple weeks ago down at Volvo. We should not only repeal right to work, but think about how we're going to uplift Virginia families in so many ways.
Andrea McClellan.
The fact of the matter is, I think we all agree on this issue. And I'm happy to see that tonight. I think we all agree that workers need better protections. So yes, I support repealing right to work, but I also support paid family and medical leave. And I support ensuring that everybody has a livable wage and that everybody has access to a good quality education and affordable housing. And I think those are all things that we agree upon here. I'm happy to be here on camera tonight with you talking about these issues. And I'm looking forward to more of your questions. Thank you.
All right, our next question is about the climate crisis. What would you do as Lieutenant Governor to address the climate crisis, and specifically on reducing greenhouse gas emissions? What can Virginia do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? We are going to start with Mark Levine.
So this is a multifaceted solution. We can't rely on just one fix. First of all, it requires a regional strategy, and we've done some of that. We joined the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. After all, it's a worldwide problem. It's not just a national problem. But we've got to include everything. So that is offshore wind, that is hydroelectric, that is geothermal, that is distributed solar, meaning that folks can easily get solar energy, whether it's rent or to buy, and then bring it back into the grid. We've done some of this with the Virginia Clean Economy Act. We can do much more. We can stop future fossil fuel infrastructure. We don't need to build new pipelines. We don't need to put more money in this old technology. It includes cap and trade. It includes incentives for electric vehicles. It includes incentives to have not gas guzzling cars. It's a multifaceted strategy. And the first comes from admitting that climate change is real. It also means dealing with flooding. Dealing with internal as well as external flooding. I know Norfolk's in real danger. Alexandria's in danger too. It's a multifaceted solution.
Xavier Warren.
As stated earlier about my highest priority, as in focusing on making Virginia the national leader in clean energy jobs, I want to be able to focus on really producing solar farms, offshore wind. We could be able to really tax incentives for having people to transition over to electric vehicles. Also for our rural residents, I want to be able to give them tax incentives as well, so they can be able to help build in charging stations in their homes and at their small businesses as well. It is crucial that we face this challenge and head on, and we can be able to do that while doing economic empowerment, economic development, and producing, like I said, good paying union jobs, bringing billions to our state budgets, and really cutting our greenhouse gases down. And I'm ready to face that issue head on.
Hala Ayala.
Thank you for that question. As a national security specialist, I know that climate change is a national security threat. Virginia is home to 27 military bases, many of them coastal. The rising sea levels threaten many of our bases, including Norfolk Naval Base. Also, our Commonwealth must combat climate change to ensure that ensures its continued economic strength, security, and prosperity. So we know that climate change is real, and it also disproportionately hurts Black and Brown communities. Combating this is part of this movement. Combating climate change is part of the racial justice movement. And as we transition out of COVID, we must expedite a transition that is cleaner, greener, and so that Virginians can be incentivized, and not only in their communities who have been disproportionately hurt by climate change, but also work to provide the resources needed so that we can make that greener transition. As Lieutenant Governor, I will continue to fight for the work that we've not only done in the General Assembly, but what we'll continue to do for the future of a greener, cleaner Virginia.
Sam Rasool.
We don't have a policy problem. We have a political problem first and foremost in Virginia. 8 years ago when I came in, I started asking questions about a Dominion energy bill. And I very quickly realized, boy, the tentacles here are deep. They dig into so much of our policy. And so building a broad coalition has to come first and foremost for me. And that's why I began a Green New Deal, because I realized what we need to do is bring together social justice, racial, economic justice, and environmental justice coalition members to say we have to stand up. The reality is we passed a bill last year that is going to increase your electric bill by 40%. To me, this is not a sustainable way to build a coalition that will be able to bring about a response to the climate crisis that it deserves. So first and foremost, let us solve this political problem, because a lot of us can agree on some of the policy, but are we going to invest in the relationships to ensure that we can push back against the Dominion energies of the world?
Andrea McClellan.
Climate change is not a future issue. It is a now issue. Michael, I've heard you report on this issue in Norfolk. The streets that I drive to go to City Hall from my house are flooded several times a month on sunny days because of sea level rise. I've been focused on this issue for almost a decade. I've been doing the work on the ground. I wrote the first climate action plan in our region. I stood up our Coastal Resilience Committee. I serve on the Joint Subcommittee on Flooding at the state level and on the American Flood Coalition Advisory Board at the national level. We talk a lot about climate change mitigation, and we need to continue to do that. And how do we reduce our carbon footprint, whether it's through electrification, energy efficiency, those are all important. But we also need to be addressing climate change adaptation, because it is a now issue, and we've got to be dealing with infrastructure dollars that are range in the billions. And so having somebody who understands local government, state government, and federal government, how do we bring those resources together to collectively address this throughout the Commonwealth is going to be important. And I can do that on day one.
And Sean Perryman.
Yeah, I won't reiterate everyone's points. I think there were a lot of good ones made. We have to stop new fossil fuel infrastructure projects. We have to invest in research like seagrass restoration to not only think about carbon neutral, but how do we get to carbon negative? But I believe Sam hit the nail on the head. It's a political problem. So how do we solve it? Well, we have a system here that allows endless contributions. Campaign finance reform is going to be key to solving that political issue. And it can't be just Dominion, because something new will prop up. If we have candidates who are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from out-of-state interests that we don't know why, that's a problem too. So we need contribution limits. We also need to have restrictions on how you use your campaign finance funds. That's how you solve that political problem. And that's how we'll get to closer to solving the climate problem that has been exacerbated by Dominion's control over our legislature.
All right, our next question is about the pandemic, which may be about to be over, right? So the governor ditched the mask mandate for vaccinated people today. Later this month, the governor is going to ease the social distancing. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on all the temporary measures that were put into place during the pandemic. Do you think any of those temporary measures should be made permanent when we sort of come out of the pandemic? And we're going to start with Xavier Warren.
Well, it certainly helps that the Biden-Harris administration really intensify the focus on vaccine distribution, but we as a state needed to do much better. I look at states kind of like New Mexico, who actually has distributed 90% of the doses that were given to them. They really focus on equity in their distribution, focusing on the hardest hit areas to really make sure they can be able to save lives right away. There's no reason why Virginia cannot do that. So we need to really meet people where they are so we can make sure to increase the amount of people that get vaccinated so we could be able to get back to normal. Students need to be back in the classrooms. People need to be able to make a living for themselves. And the biggest opportunity for change is always following a crisis. And that's the reason why I want your vote to be Lieutenant Governor, to really focus on how we can be able to better everyone economically, because financially people have been hurting before COVID arrived. COVID made it worse, and we need to focus on working class folks.
Hala Ayala.
Thank you for that question, Michael. Look, the Commonwealth has administered more than 3 million doses, and more than 25% of Virginians have been vaccinated. In fact, that more than 4 out of 5 of the first doses have been given to us by the federal government have already been administered. So we've been really safe throughout this pandemic because Governor Northam followed the science and listened to our health professionals. From the beginning, we knew it was going to take time to ensure that every Virginian had the chance to be vaccinated, but we're moving quickly to keep every person safe. And I think we have done well throughout this response. I'm supportive of the administration's response to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Again, we're fortunate enough to have a doctor who has navigated these very difficult waters in absence of a president who is constantly trying to obstruct every progress made during this pandemic and any other issue. And we'll probably get into that later. But with that, we have been consistent as a national leader. We, from the mask mandate to the vaccine rollout, we have been just in good hands. So I'm really grateful for not only the work the General Assembly has done, but the work that our governor has done.
Sam Rasool.
I think Xavier brought up a great point. In crisis, it gives us an opportunity to really highlight some of the issues that were already there. And if we declare that this crisis is over prematurely, we are really missing the boat here, because we saw the education inequities, we saw the healthcare disparities just exacerbated. So while there are programs that I want to continue on with the rent and mortgage relief program, with the Rebuild Virginia program, as we're thinking through how we're going to be able to support our Main Street businesses and workers, there is a lot that we need to be doing on the healthcare equity front, and certainly on the education piece. It is clear that the increased emphasis on childcare is a good thing that we need to continue. And most importantly, figuring out how we're going to fund the broadband necessary to bring that education equity all across the Commonwealth.
Andrea McClellan.
I agree with Sam, Xavier. Good job. We have to take some of the lessons learned and continue these, whether it's making sure that our children have access to devices and hotspots. Ultimately, I'd love to make sure that each of their homes has access to high-speed internet as well. Also, I think we need to continue the issue of access to telehealth and telemental health in providing parity and pay parity to allow folks to continue to access their doctors and mental health care professionals in their homes or wherever they need to provide access. Those things have gone well, and I'd like to continue those things. Some things that haven't gone so well. We look at the Virginia Employment Commission. We need to be doubling down on what's happened there. Virginia is ranked nearly at the bottom or at the bottom in terms of addressing appeals for unemployed unemployment. And we need to be thinking about how do we support our technology systems and infrastructure throughout the state.
Sean Perryman.
Let me just say really quickly that this pandemic is not over. We've seen what happens in other countries when they think it's over, and then look at India, the variants. We have to be vigilant against that, and I worry that we're moving out of this too fast. We also have to think about the ramifications of long COVID to our healthcare system and in our economy for people who are struggling with that. But to answer your question about the temporary things that should stay, we need to incentivize remote work. It slows down congestion, stops or reduces pollution. This is something that we should look towards. We also need to think about the restrictions that were taken off of businesses, allowing to take away alcohol and everything else. We didn't see some spike in irresponsible behavior. We need to keep some of those things in place. And finally, I'll say the accessibility. Too many people in our communities our community with disabilities were locked out of access to things, whether that be school, work, or anything else. We have to keep some sort of virtual environment to keep those people engaged and give them as much access as possible.
And Mark Levine.
I think we have to look at our response to COVID with a very clear eye. We shouldn't just be celebratory. I think Virginia in many ways wasn't ready when it started. Now, to be fair, I think under Donald Trump, the country wasn't ready. And I also know we hadn't had a massive pandemic in a century. But still, we weren't ready. I remember when people in nursing homes were being harmed much more often. Now, again, a nationwide problem, we weren't prepared. One of the things I did is got right to work, pressing the governor to help folks in nursing homes, to help folks in communities that weren't getting PPE, that weren't getting testing equipment. We had unequal access to vaccines at first. It didn't work well at first. Now we're doing much better now. But we're doing better because advocates like me press the governor to do better. And in some ways, like the Virginia Employment Commission, we still haven't done good enough. So we need to keep these lessons. Yes, we need telehealth. Yes, we need virtual meetings. And I was working on that even before the pandemic got started. Yes, we need equal access. We need to make sure that it's not just the people who complain they get the vaccines, but communities that don't complain, they get the vaccines. So we need to have that equality there as well.
All right, sadly, we've come to the point in our forum, which is the end. And so instead of giving the candidates an opportunity for closing statements, I'm going to ask a question here at the end that will give you an opportunity to sort of wrap things up and give a pitch to voters. So the question, our last question is this: what do you want your legacy to be when you're no longer the Attorney General and when people look sort of backwards in your 4 years in office?
I think you meant Lieutenant Governor, my friend.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Attorney General.
Why? I don't know why I would say that. All right, so let me wrap that up again. So when you are no longer the Lieutenant Governor, what do you want people to say your legacy was as Lieutenant Governor? And we are going to start with Hala Ayala.
Thank you for that question. I actually really like it. You know, when you're someone who didn't see their life being available today just because of the lived struggles from having your father taken away from you by murdered when I was 2, and having tragedy and just a lot of lived experiences. I want my legacy to be that they know that everything I've done was from compassion and empathy, because I know what the thin line between struggle and potential success is, and that I was the last woman in the room with the governor, whomever she or he would be, and that I fought and advocated for equity and equality on all levels of our systems and legislation, and put forth just that tenacity and passion to look out for the little guy. And that's what I'll do as Lieutenant Governor, or when I'm Lieutenant Governor. I will continue to advocate, give voice to the voiceless, make sure that every Virginian has a seat at the table versus being on the menu, and making sure that we work hard every day to make you proud. So thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me just be a part of this forum and my own unique experience that was happening around me. And I really appreciate your time.
Sam Rasool.
Yeah, for me, it's that truth, love, and grit. Look, when I was thinking about what this campaign would look like, I just came back to those 3 family values. And to me, this is what's important, uplifting the truth. Like when we were having a meal a few months ago, we ordered some pizza. And who was delivering the pizza? was one of the local teachers here. She recognized me. Many of you know I'm doing a project where I substitute teach in every school in my district. And she recognized me, and it was terrible to say that we're one of the richest states in the nation, but yet we unfortunately cannot pay our teachers what they deserve. Uplifting that truth, really loving on our neighbors and challenging the way we even campaign by building goodwill in folks. And then through Virginia Grit, visiting every city and county in person. And that's what I would want people to say, because, you know, look, there's this piece. This is in Dickinson County, in the Dickinson Star. It says, Sam's coming to the fighting knife. I've seen most of the candidates on this virtual stage visit large swaths of Virginia. This had nothing to do with Sam Rasool. This had everything to do with people just being desperate to be heard. And for me, it is important that we recognize that whoever the nominee is and our eventual lieutenant governor, that we do everything that we can to lift up all parts of Virginia. And so I hope when we look back, people will remember that truth, love, and grit.
Andrea McClellan.
Sam, I had the opportunity to go to Dickinson County last week, and what a special place. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. You know, as my legacy, I hope that people will think of Lieutenant Governor McClellan as somebody who was accessible, who found resources for folks and created more equitable access to opportunity so that their kids could get a better education, that they could find a better job, that they could find an affordable, safe place to live, that their environment was not flooded on a regular basis. And I look forward to bringing my 30 years of experience in the business sector, the nonprofit arena, the public sector, to connect the dots and to make a better place for all Virginians to live. And then I'll be one of the most accessible lieutenant governors who's traveled to every county and every city, who understands local government and can be the bridge between what happens on Main Street and the state capitol. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here tonight. Thanks.
Sean Perryman.
I want my legacy to be that as Lieutenant Governor, I stopped the lip service and put words into action. For the last year, we've been talking about Black Lives Matter. We watched George Floyd murdered. We talked about all the great things that we want. And I think even us as Democrats have come short. And so I want to be that person that's holding not only Republicans accountable and talking about the boogeyman on the other side, but that's talking about why we are failing everyday people. And that's going there and being their champion, going around the Commonwealth and truly fighting for them. That's why I'm here. It's not because I enjoy this, it's because I think that we have an opportunity in this crisis to do something great that hasn't been done in generations. And so I wanna be a part of that.
Mark Levine.
So I hope when history books are written, they say that Lieutenant Governor Mark Levine transformed the office, took it from really a figurehead office, folks who did nothing but preside over the Senate and cast the deciding vote, to really be an active lieutenant governor, the first full-time lieutenant governor in Virginia history, working 12 months a year, just like our vice president has been transforming the United States, going to every one of Virginia counties and cities, not for a campaign, but to really hear those ideas and bringing those ideas forward. The guy that solved the problems. I want them to say that I was the one who actually went up against Democrats when they weren't acting reasonably, as well as Republicans, but also worked across the aisle just to solve basic people's problems. Someone, I hope they say, that helped reduce economic inequality, reduce gun violence, reduce the threat of climate change, made healthcare more affordable, made government more transparent. I have to chair the Virginia Transparency Caucus. It's something I've been fighting for ever since I've been in General Assembly.
And Xavier Warren.
What my legacy to be, our legacy to be, is that people will say, Xavier made our Commonwealth a much better place because he was one of us. He graduated from our public schools and also our minority serving institution. He lived and worked in both rural and urban Virginia. He knew what it's like as a former restaurant server, retail worker, what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and write his name on the back of a check. Also, small business owners, they knew what the responsibilities that came to writing your name on the front of a check. I visited all the way from Virginia University of Lynchburg, HBCU, that the president said, in 30 years I've been here, never a statewide candidate has ever visited us. I think about when I was in Farmville and visited Moton High School, where Barbara Johns and Dorothy Davis led the Brown versus Board of Education. And even in 2021, our schools are separated and also unequal. I think about people in Central or Southside Virginia that lost their jobs when manufacturing textile jobs went overseas and never ever recovered. I think about the people in the Hampton Roads area in Northern Virginia that are so dependent on naval and government funding that if the federal budget just goes down just a little bit, it destroys military families, spouses, and also loved ones and family members. It's time that they say that one of us, a union member, one of us, an educator, one of us was in lieutenant governor. He made Virginia a better place.
All right. Well, I appreciate the candidates being with us tonight and answering our questions. We had a bunch more questions. Those are just the ones we were able to get to. I'd like to thank the viewers for watching, and I'm going to turn it back to Lisa.
Great, thank you, Michael. A giant thanks to you, for agreeing to moderate this. We truly appreciate it.
Hey, it was fun. Thanks for asking me.
Thank you so much. So just a few other thanks. Thank you to the Virginia Association Democratic Chairs team, Clarence, Roberta, Tina, Jen, and Ricardo for setting this all up for us. Thank you so much for the viewers. And just a reminder, this has been recorded. So, we will have access to it in the future. If, you heard something or you're like, hey, wait, I don't remember how they responded, we will have it recorded. So thank you all for spending your Friday evening with us. And I really, really hope that this was informative for you. And thank you again to everybody for submitting questions. I do wish we had more time to ask more because this has been a great conversation. If you have questions for your candidates, please make sure to reach out to them, connect with them and vote in the primaries. Have a good evening.